Winter will arrive soon in Ukraine. Temperatures will drop below freezing. Snow, ice, and frigid temperatures will be part of daily life. Due to damaged infrastructure and wartime rationing, many people will be without heat and electricity this winter. Food is hard to come by, and fresh water is a rarity for some, but you can help. Camino is a non-profit working with partners on the ground in Ukraine to solve the most urgent needs. Jan Dus is Camino's founder. He has an extensive background in nonprofit service, including Doctors Without Borders. A native of the Czech Republic, Jan is a former Presbyterian pastor who served in Oklahoma. Camino is powered by volunteers. More than 96% of received funds are used for direct project support. Your gifts can help those most at risk: orphans, the elderly, families, people with disabilities, and other socially marginalized groups. Camino is currently focused on providing Ukrainians with food, water, clothing, shelter, and hygiene supplies. They are working with partners in the Kharkiv and Kherson areas to bring these and other life-sustaining provisions to people who remain near the front lines. South of Kyiv and in western Ukraine, Camino is working with partners to provide shelter and needed support for vulnerable people who escaped the fighting at the eastern front lines. The needs of displaced and at-risk people increase daily as the war continues in Ukraine. Camino needs your support to provide life-sustaining supplies, security, and safety to alleviate suffering and work for peace. Please consider a one-time or recurring donation to sustain Camino's important and life-saving work.
Well, my name is Jan Dus, and I am a Presbyterian minister from the Czech Republic. And I have been working in the area of humanitarian work. I spent the last 15 years actually working in humanitarian field. And the last area that I've been working in is Ukraine since the war started with a little organization called Camino, which we started with my wife and a group of friends at the moment when the war broke off. And I was here in this congregation a year ago and was talking about Camino. So this is actually an update on what happened in the meantime. But if you were not here last year, don't worry about that, because there is information which is kind of clear. So you won't be feeling like you are watching a second episode and you must miss the first one. And this is not a thriller, so there is not a specific data that you would miss. And if you were here last year, don't worry, because the pictures are brand new. I was last time in Ukraine 2 weeks ago, and the vast majority of the photographs are from the last visit 2 weeks ago.
Great.
We can move on.
Yes, absolutely.
So what we will start with is a little video, which I showed already last year, but I think it's worthwhile seeing again. It is a video which Presbyterian Foundation of this church, of Presbyterian Church USA, prepared for us, for Camino. And normally it starts like this. Yeah.
Winter will arrive soon in Ukraine. Temperatures will drop below freezing. Snow, ice, and frigid temperatures will be part
That's
of
me.
daily
Sorry.
life. Due to damaged infrastructure
So that is a little introduction. We as Camino are a small organization. We are all volunteer based. All of us are volunteers, and we don't want it to be different than that. Um, all of us are doing that in our free time, and being a small organization gives us an opportunity to partner with Ukrainian small organizations. Most of our partners are little grassroots organizations that actually did not exist before the war. There is just one exception of an organization that is older. And all of those actually are founded by Ukrainian people there on spot as a civic Christian response to the needs of the war and to the needs that they saw around themselves. And we focus mainly on three different areas. You can see it on the slide. We focus on food provisions, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine, close to the front lines, in the areas where people cannot really take care of themselves. Then we support shelters that open their doors to people who are escaping from the eastern Ukraine. These shelters are in central and western Ukraine in more safe areas. And we take care of Ukrainian children, mainly orphans. Those are the three areas on which we are active. But you will see that it is kind of more versatile and more diverse. The first thing when I'm comparing, I've been going to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. I visited Ukraine several times even before, but since the beginning of the war, I was there maybe 14, 15 times, and I spent there altogether about 6 months. And when I compare the situation when I first started coming there at the beginning of the war and nowadays, there are some things which actually have developed and which are different. And one of those is this. I call it not just statistics because there is a saying which says one death is a tragedy, 100,000 deaths is a statistics. But for Ukrainians, this is not a statistics. If you come to Kiev, this is a picture of on the main square on Maidan in Kiev. And every time I come there, there is more photographs, more flags, more names of the people. And you can see what it looks like. It's kind of very personal when you walk through that. You see lots of little flags. Every little flag is put there by friends or a family of somebody who died in the conflict. And when I was walking through that last time, several people stopped me and asked me in Ukrainian saying, have you lost somebody here? Is it somebody of your friends? Is it someone of your family? Very personal for the people. And this is only in Kiev. When you come to any town, bigger town, small town, a little village, and you walk into the cemetery, you can see graves with Ukrainian flags. Every grave that has a Ukrainian flag is a grave for a soldier. For me, one of the very moving moments was when I was watching one of the funerals of a Ukrainian soldier. And when the funeral procession was going through the town, people were standing alongside on the sidewalks and they were falling on their knees. And seeing old ladies, 80-year-old ladies, falling on their knees was something that was very, very moving for me. Another thing which is different during the 3 years of the war is that at the beginning, the danger was clearly contained to the frontline areas, to the eastern Ukraine. When we went there, we knew that there would be bomb alerts, and we knew that we would need to be careful. We would need to hide in bomb shelters. But when we were in central or western Ukraine, we felt safe. Nowadays, the attacks are all around the country. Yesterday, when I was finishing this video, I opened an application on my cell phone, which I downloaded and I keep it for Ukraine, which tells you always about the danger of that moment. So this is yesterday about this time in the afternoon, and you can see that all the eastern part and good portion of the central part of Ukraine was at that time under bomb alert. And it is not a coincidence. It's every day like that. Like if I would switch it on now, probably it would look very similar to that. It might cover the whole country. It might cover an area like this. And this is something what is also relatively new for me, that the dangerous areas are much wider than they were before. And saying that you feel safe is very, very relative in Ukraine.
What's the volume on this?
Oh, that's good enough. Yeah. And the next one. This is what basically keeps accompanying you every time that you are in Ukraine. Either you have the application on your cell phone and it warns you when there is a warning for the area that you are in, or you hear the siren from the outside, or both at the same time. I said that it is it is very relative now about the safe place. I will give you an example of my last visit when I was there. When I first came to Ukraine, I went straight to southeastern part to the Kherson area, which is very close to front lines. And then I went basically north, I could say along the front lines, and I visited several towns, Kharkiv and Sumy, which are all close to front lines. And I spent several days there. And when you are in those areas, you kind of expect that you will not sleep the whole night through, that there will be a bomb alert during the night. You will need to get up, you will need to go to a bomb shelter, spend there some time, then you will return back to bed. And it was so, but in those areas it is normal. It is so to say everyday reality. After I spent some time in this area, I went to Kiev because I had some meetings there. And I thought, okay, so this is the occasion when I will finally sleep and have a calm night. It was the worst night of the whole trip. We had 3 bomb alerts during that night. First one at 11 p.m., the other one between 2 and 3 a.m., and the last one at 6 a.m. And the 6 a.m. was the worst one because the bomb fell before the sirens went off, which is always a bad sign. It always means that it took the Ukrainian defense off guard. It was something that was very surprising. And from the detonation, it was also clear that it was relatively close to where we were. Basically, when you have the feeling that air is passing through your room, like you are sitting in a closed room like this one, and all of a sudden there is a wave of air going through, then it is clear that it is less than a mile away. That was at 6 a.m., so I was kind of trying to find out where it happened. I found out where it was. I was there at 10 a.m., and these are the pictures of the area as it looked like 4 hours after the detonation. The police, the army, the firemen were already there. You can see that it destroyed some of the office buildings on the previous pictures. Here we have some apartments where people have been living that have been destroyed as well. They have tractors with plows, but unlike plows here today, maybe it is not for snow, but it is for the debris. So they just keep cleaning the streets. And this is a picture which I really like. These guys are replacing a window of a shop 4 hours after the detonation. They're already replacing that. And that is something that is so typical for Ukraine. I saw it at many different locations, that they do their best to return as fast as possible to normality. Would you come to Ukraine would you come to Kiev, you would feel like you are in a regular city. You would not even believe that there is a war going on. You would see people walking on the streets, having fun, talking, discussing, sitting in a restaurant, having dinners with their families. But then all of a sudden, the siren goes off, maybe the bombing starts, the situation changes. But then after this is done, people swiftly return back to normality. And I think this is one way in which they are trying to keep a sound mind. You cannot live for years in a permanent danger. You need kind of to persuade yourself that the life is good, life is normal, I can still enjoy good moments. And that's what they have been trying to do. After bombing, that takes us already to the things that our partners do, and we have been supporting them in doing. This picture is not from Kiev, it is from Kharkiv, a different city, but it is a detonation. It is a place where a Russian rocket or bomb fell. It happened at 7 p.m. in the evening. Luckily, no building was hit, but there were buildings in the vicinity, as you can see, and they lost their windows. You can see some of the windows being boarded. Well, what happens, what one of our partner organizations does in this area is the moment there is an attack like this, they have teams of volunteers that get into cars and they drive to this area and they start immediately boarding windows for the people. So at 7 o'clock, this happened. Before 9 o'clock, there were already teams of volunteers, and they were going apartment to apartment, asking people what were their bedrooms and fixing the windows in the bedrooms so they can stay that very night in their own home. They don't need to move away because the people don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
There is no way. And they just fixed the windows of the bedrooms, went back home midnight. In the morning, they returned. I'm there the next day, which means the very morning, maybe at 9 a.m. I was there. And you can see that not only bedrooms, but many other windows were already boarded by then. They have been working very swiftly. They call it sewing. They say we need to sew up those windows with wooden boards.
How cold is it there right now? Like at the time when these
The
things
winter
happening?
is pretty serious in Ukraine. It depends on which region you are in. If you are in the Kherson area in the south, it would be comparable to Oklahoma. If you are at the Kharkiv area in the north, it would be like the Midwest, like Iowa or Minnesota. So it gets really cold.
A lot of snow.
Snow.
Cold, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do these buildings have heat in them now?
Yeah. Well, the buildings are normally heated either with natural gas or electricity. So it depends if it is working or not. And there are times when it is working, and there are times when it is not, depending. The blue in the back is a tent that our volunteers built. Yes, this is the inside of the tent, just for them to have a little place where they can warm up and do their work.
Is it hard to get supplies to?
I was about to ask the same
windows? 'Cause
question.
there's a lot of plywood there.
Yeah.
No, actually not. In the beginning of the war, it was really hard to get, but nowadays the Ukrainian economy is working fairly well.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a different situation, different town. This is in the southeast in Kherson. And you can see, again, there was a bombing, but the house was much more severely destroyed. Here you can see the lady who used to live in that house. Luckily, she was not present, so she has survived the attack. Part of the house has still preserved, and there is this little part. And those teams which are there are trying to fix at least what has been saved from the house so the people can stay there and can live there. So here they will be covering it to kind of to create a temporary roof so the lady can keep living there. And these are her neighbors living just across the street. And they have been more lucky because only their roof has been damaged. And there is a team which is putting on a tarp on the roof, kind of to cover it temporarily.
So these are all like individual homes here?
Those are homes owned by individual people. Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly.
So these volunteers, are they people from Ukraine? Are they coming from other countries?
Those are local people.
Local people.
Always, yes, in all of these organizations. Those are locals who just come together and help the other people. Yeah.
Mm.
And this team, they have actually several teams, this group, this organization, and they started working on the roofs a year and a half ago. And they calculated that during the year and a half, they replaced 1,500 roofs, or just covered by tarp.
Sure.
But yeah,
Weather outing.
exactly, to make it livable so the people can live further in their homes. Another thing which organizations that we work with do is helping protecting the civilians, and we have been supporting them in that. This picture is a little area in a orphanage, actually, originally, orphanage called Father's House. I was talking about this orphanage last year when I was here. And it is one of the orphanages which was lucky enough and also ready. So when the war started, they grabbed all the children and moved them away to Germany. And now the children are in safety in Germany. And they have been making their buildings available to other purposes. And one of the purposes that they have been reconstructing that for is so-called what they call in Ukrainian punkt nezlomnosti, which means a point of unbreakable point. And what they mean by that is that it is a little refuge for people to be able to go into temporarily. Imagine that you are in Kiev or in other Ukrainian city. The bombing might not be going on, but still the electrical cuts are so frequent that very often you sit in your apartment. It is cold because the electricity is off. It is dark because it's in the evening. You cannot make a warm meal because the electricity, the gas is not working. So you cannot even make a tea for yourself. And the battery in your cell phone is going off. Huh? And for exactly for those purposes are these unbreakable points for the people to be able to go there for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, get warm meal, get hot tea, warm up, meet with other people, charge their cell phones, charge their own inner batteries, and then go back to their apartments.
Mm.
So a lot of this damage, does it occur in neighborhoods? Is it primarily like in the center of cities and
All
businesses, or is it?
all around. Basically, sometimes it is really hard to tell if the Russian army is just shooting haphazardly, or if it is a purpose and they want to just discourage the population. But it seems that they mainly aim at places where there will be more people, and they would cause distress among the population.
Sure.
Of course, in order for an unbreakable point to run, you need to have a diesel generator. Another thing that this particular organization, the Orphanage Father's House, created is a bomb shelter. They built it in the last year, and this is what it looks like inside. And it is not only for the people who are currently housed in the father's house, but also for the people in the neighborhood. So there's an open door. Whoever feels like it can walk in the time of bombing. Even there are families who decide when the frequency of bombing is fairly regular, and you can expect that there will be a bombing overnight. You have small children, rather than exposing them every evening to the stress of, oh, we need to get up again from bed, move on. The families go there in the evening and just make it a night there together with other families. This gentleman is not a professional stove operator, even though he often operates stove in the bomb shelter. He's the local pastor who just volunteers there.
So this is a furnace then?
That is a furnace, yeah. And it runs on wood.
Okay.
Lots of firewood. Wow.
many people are able to sleep in that shelter?
About 30, 35, yeah. Sleep. But if you need really to put more people in, you just put in as many people as you
Mhm.
can.
Yeah.
Winterization is what we have been focusing on now. In humanitarian language, it meant in the fall getting ready for the winter, and during the winter kind of trying to strengthen, to help the people as much as possible so they would make it through the winter as easily as it is, as it goes. One of the things that we have been helping financially with is wood. This is from the storage of our partners in Kharkiv, where they distribute wood to different families in the area which is close to front lines. You can see that it is really wood inside.
So you have some forklifts to move those?
Yes.
You got
Yes.
Huge
Uh-huh.
bundles, there, those gotta
Yeah.
be pretty heavy.
Mhm, mhm. Very often the recipients are senior citizens,
Mhm.
the recipients of our aid. It is so because in the frontline areas, when the front kind of started moving towards the frontline areas, many people who are active, who are strong, who have the education, who have the means, moved away, got into their cars, got on train, just left. And the people who are left behind are the old grandmas and grandpas
Couldn't
who have nobody, they couldn't do it, they don't have the courage, they don't have the health, and they basically tell you, well, this is my house, what happens, happens. If they are Christian, if they use Christian language, they say it is in the God's hands.
Mm.
So this is one of the ladies that we have been donating wood to. Huh?
Mm.
And here is her wood pile.
Mm.
Another man.
you provide food to her too?
Not to these two people because they are still self-sustaining,
Okay.
but the generation which is the most typical recipient of our food would be the same generation. Yeah. Just in a different area. Another thing which we have been providing to people are these little lamps, as this lady is holding, or this one. It is just a lamp with a battery, but the thing is that the battery goes forever. It can be on for days without needing without a need for recharging.
You have a solar cell on it?
No, just a good heavy battery.
Oh,
And again, if you imagine that you are alone in a home, electricity is off, it is dark, just having a little light makes all the difference.
better done.
Mm.
Food, I was talking about it already a little bit. This is one of the kitchens. This one is in Kherson, in a town in the southeast of Ukraine, close to the front lines. And this particular kitchen makes 1,800 meals and 1,800 breads every day. Working day, weekend, they keep baking bread and cooking meal. And if you look at this picture, behind those two ladies, you can see boarded windows, and there'll be more on other pictures. Yeah, there is a lady processing meat. I've never seen cooking in such huge quantities as in these kitchens. It's just enormous
A lot of
bulks. Here you can see also boarded windows. Here the reason for the boards is not that the glass would have been shattered, but it is a precaution because this kitchen is about 5 miles away from the front line.
Mhm.
And they start working early in the morning, 4:35 a.m. So the light would attract Russian
Oof.
Russian
Wanna
bombs,
discourage it.
rockets.
Yeah.
So that's why they need to have the windows blocked so they would not be attracting too much attention.
Like you'd want to cover every window anyway.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're replacing glass constantly. probably.
That is a good comment. Very often when you come to these cities, which are really close to front lines, you can tell where people are living and where not by the boards. If there are no boards in the windows, it means nobody's living there. where people live, the windows are boarded. But at the same time, if you board the windows, you don't have light inside if there is no electricity running.
Yeah.
So you live in lots of time in dark. Distribution of food is another thing that our partner organizations do. This particular one is to families with 3 children and more. Safe space for children. That's another area in which our partner organizations started working, and it was relatively new. It started like a year ago. When the war first started, and you probably caught this on the news, the Russian army was targeting schools and kindergartens quite frequently. That's why the Ukrainian government decided that schools and kindergartens need to close down. The only possibility for running a school or a kindergarten is that you have a bomb shelter. Very few schools have bomb shelters. Now they started building them, but even if they build one, it doesn't have a capacity to shelter all of the children. So in that case, the children need to come to school in shifts, morning, afternoon, or 1 week on, 1 week off. Many children are left on online education. Now we are talking about online education in a country that has electricity blackouts.
Yeah.
So now when you look at it, before the war, there was COVID, like here. So children didn't go to school because of COVID. Now they don't go to school because of the war. There is a generation of kids that have not been in school for 5 years. I'm afraid that it will have a major impact on Ukraine decades after the war. Well, what this organization is doing is they are creating safe spaces for children where they can come, they can have different activities, including some schooling. They don't call it a school because they cannot really compete with the school system or replace it, but they do some education there as well. And they typically created, like in this situation, in a basement of an apartment building, so it is a safe place. And a dirty basement changes into a beautiful, welcoming areas for children. These are pictures of several of them. I visited 3, so these are pictures kind of combined. When they teach very often mathematics, they teach Ukrainian, and they like teaching English. English is big. This lady is an English teacher. This is for activities of adults. Some of the centers also welcome adults to come, maybe for an hour, 2 hours in the afternoon, for the people to be able to socialize. Because one of the negative effects of war is that people are very lonely, closed in their homes, left in their worries alone. Also, all of these centers actually, which I visited, have a psychologist. This lady on the right side of the picture is a psychologist here, and she has groups of adults, groups of children. She also organizes activities for children with parents together, because she says one of the things that the war brings is a separation of generations as well. People are so worried that they are closed within themselves. They are only focusing on the basic kind of economical functions of a family and safety functions of a family, but they don't invest into relationships. So it is one of the things that they have been trying to support as well. You can tell that they really, the people who work in these places, who are volunteering there, have their heart really there with the work with the children.
It'll be very difficult for the children, for sure.
The word in Ukrainian is mini, which means mines. And this is one of the activities which need to be done as well. And it is actually a mine awareness program. for all different generations, because landmines are very dangerous. Landmines are relatively light. So when there is a heavy rain, they float with water, and you can find them somewhere where they were not the day before. And big areas of Ukraine have been mined. It is an area which is double the size of the Czech Republic, of my country. So I would say it's definitely bigger than Oklahoma, part of Ukraine, which is the demining would take a very long time. Like it is so dangerous that, for example, for us, when we go into Ukraine, the rule is that we don't step outside of a paved area. We always stay on pavement. We never step into grass.
If it comes to bombs and things.
I was present at a lecture for children of 7 years of age, approximately, about mines and the danger of mines, and I had a very double feelings about that. On one hand, I felt really sorry that children of this age have to talk about this subject and have to kind of be instructed in that. At the other hand, what was interesting for me was that actually it was clear that it was not the first time for them. They were enjoying themselves. For them, it was as if they were talking about animals or about history or anything exciting. They were raising their hands and filling in the gaps, and they just enjoyed themselves. Wow. So for me, it was strange and cute at the same time. Another organization that we support is an organization that works with war-wounded civilians. It was founded by, it started, huh?
Yep.
Okay, let's stop it for a second. Thank you. It is an organization which was started by a lady in her 50s in Kharkiv. Her name is Olha Ridna, and when the war started, Kharkiv is in the kind of east and north corner of Ukraine, basically bordering on Russia, both from the east and from the north. And the borderline is 30 miles away from the city, maybe. So nobody, including myself, believed that Kharkiv would be able to withstand the Russian attack. It did in the end. But when the war started, the vast majority of Kharkovans just left the city, just massively, on trains, in cars. It was a massive exodus. The city is so empty that for me, when I come to Kharkiv, I have a very strange feeling, because you walk through the city, it is dark, and you don't see lights, because the apartments are empty. There is nobody on the street. It's a complete like dark city. Very, very strange. Very strange
How
feeling.
big of a city was that prior to the war?
3 million people, 2 to 3 million people, definitely. So most of the people left. Who stayed were the people who wanted to defend the city, and many of the volunteers really grabbed arms if they had the training and started defending. And then people who stayed for some reason, like this Olha Ridna. I asked her later on when we first met why she stayed, and she told me she didn't know. She said that she believed that there was a reason for her to stay, but she couldn't name it at the moment when she was staying. But several weeks later, she started encountering people who were war wounded, or who had friends who were wounded in the war, by Russian shooting, by bombing, by stepping on a landmine. And she started supporting these people, and she grew a group around herself. And now she has an organization that works with war-wounded civilians, and we have been supporting them. I met her through another partner organization that we have been working with earlier in Kharkiv. And there was an organization that was cooking meals, and they were great. They could have just enjoyed our support, But next to it, they said, well, it is good that we have been working together, but there is another organization that we learned about, and you might want to know about them because we think that you might be a good match with them as well. And they introduced me to Ola. And since then, whenever I come to Kharkiv, I get in touch with her, and she organizes for me a meeting with several people who have been war wounded. Every time, those are different people, and they tell me their stories. And that is probably one of the most moving time always when I go to Ukraine. And this video is a video of my last visit when I met again. They were, I think, 6 people who were war wounded. And the whole video is for 10 minutes. It's too long. But I want to show you 2 or 3 minutes where the first 2 ladies will be telling their stories. And yeah, I'll be commenting on that in English.
У важкий час війни кожен акт доброти має значення. Сьогодні ми хочемо висловити нашу глибоку вдячність людині, яка не залишається байдужою.
The group around Olha Ridna now has been supporting about 130 war wounded civilians. And I'll just run through the pictures just to give you an idea of people's faces. When you see them with bags, those are people who receive from us also some living necessities. Otherwise, we support their medical expenses, we support their physical therapy, but very often the war wounded civilians are also people who are the breadwinners for the family. So all of a sudden, the family not only has a sorrow of having a ill person, not only have somebody to take care for, but they also lose their economical income. And then they are dependent on donations. When I was here last time, I was also talking more about shelters and about IDPs, internally displaced persons, people who had to leave Eastern Ukraine and found shelter in Central or Western Ukraine. It is something that has been on throughout the whole 3 years. It has not disappeared. There are still people who don't have their homes and who are dependent on receiving a shelter somewhere. These are pictures from Western Ukraine, from the town called Uzhhorod, where a lady, her name is Eleonora Kulchar, rented an old closed down bed and breakfast place and changed it into a shelter. They house 80 people at a time, but they do their best always for the people to limit the stay as little as possible. They try to work with them, find out what they could do, how they can make money, what kind of job they can find. Then they try to find another housing for them and move them on. So since the beginning of the war, 1,700 people went through this shelter. Orphanages, I mentioned that we have been working with orphanages and orphans. Luckily, all the 3 orphanages that we have been working with were able throughout the war to leave the country, to evacuate the children into safe areas, Germany or Poland. And now the buildings of the orphanages have been serving to IDPs, to people who lived in Eastern Ukraine, had to leave the places because they were dangerous, and they found a temporary refuge in those buildings. This young man is very good in preparing tea, and he loves welcoming visitors with a cup of tea. So would you like to have a good Ukrainian tea? I can recommend this restaurant. Typically, the people in shelters are mothers with children. The gentleman on the picture is the same pastor who was taking care of the furnace. Huh? He was my guide here. Torn families, that is one of the aspects of the Ukrainian war. I already mentioned that. Typically, those are mothers with children because the father is either in the army or the father had to stay in the area where they are from. But when the family lived in the dangerous area, then the husband and wife decided that the mother would take the children, would go elsewhere. So all of a sudden, she is the one who is basically taking care alone of the children. And the family has been separated for 3 years, which is when you look at the age of the children, it's ages. And the mothers are very often in a very complicated situation. Many of them shared that with me in deciding if they should take the children occasionally and go and visit the father in the dangerous area and know that if they are exposing their children to a danger, or if they should keep the children separated from the father, only relating on the computer screen and on electricity that we can say hello and wave hands. It is very hard. It's very hard on both sides, on the mothers and the fathers. Another example, to me, quite extreme. This little girl, when she was a year and a half old, was found in a garbage can. She was of good health. She went to the hospital for checkups. After several days in the hospital, she was ready to be discharged. And she was offered for adoption, and she was adopted by this pastor, Konstantin, and his wife. And since then, she is living in this family. But the husband and wife adopted more than just her. They have 3 children of their own and 9 adopted children. Among the 12 nowadays, the 3 oldest boys are serving in the army. I cannot imagine being a father, what he feels like having 3 sons serving in the army at the same time. It's part of the torn families as well. Now a little bit towards the more optimistic information. It is the same gentleman, Konstantin. He is a pastor. Before the war already, his church opened a senior home, a retirement home, and he was a manager of the retirement home. The retirement home was serving 40 children, 40 adults, 40 senior citizens. Well, as the war started, there was more and more need in accepting people who were escaping from the war, senior citizens from Eastern Ukraine whose homes were being targeted. So they had to be evacuated. They found a refuge in this house, mothers with children. So nowadays, instead of 40, they have 150 people living in the house. Last year, when I was here, I was talking about chickens and piglets. That is them.
Okay.
In order to be able to feed the people, with our support, they bought 1,000 chickens and 100 piglets because they needed to solve a problem, how to keep meat fresh when the electricity is running on and off, so the refrigerators are not functioning. And they decided that the best fresh meat is the meat which keeps running around. So he became a farmer. That is his threadhead. Well, now when I was there 2 weeks ago, he has a brand new project for the spring, and those are greenhouses, vegetables for the people in the house. And you can see that when he plants something, it is not small. And the nice thing is these 4 young men, and there is more of them, are people who are from Eastern Ukraine, didn't have a place to go. They found refuge and shelter in the home, and now they are working on the farm. So it gives them a completely new purpose. Huh? They are not recipients of help anymore. They are not sitting and begging for help. They are there working on the farm, and they are supporting the community of the old little ladies that they know, and they work for the old little grandmas and help them to have some food on the table. And as a nice side effect, they also get paid a little bit. It is a little tiny money, even in Ukrainian terms, but it is their own money, which they make through their work. Another thing which actually started relatively new last year is distribution of goods in dangerous areas. And that's what some of our partner organizations started doing, because you have big NGOs, big international NGOs, or UN agencies who are able to collect money, they are able to buy clothing, food, whatever, but they cannot deliver it to the final for the final use because it is too dangerous for them. It is too close to the front lines, too dangerous to get there. So what they do is they bring the truckloads into storages, which our partners rent, and from there, our partner organizations have been distributing that to different families, to different villages. And it is winter clothing, it is food, it is wood, those are blankets, just whatever is needed in the winter. And this lady, Katarina, is the leader of one of the set of storages in northwestern Ukraine, and she's a very dynamic manager. She is very good in leading that. Hints of hope towards the end. Huh? This is a village. There are several of them in southern Ukraine, close to the town called Mykolaiv. I first went there maybe 2.5 years ago at the beginning of the war. These villages are in the area where Russians invaded at the very beginning of the war. They were trying to get through this area all the way to Odessa and take over Odessa. They have not managed it. They were pushed out by the Ukrainian army, but what was left behind were destroyed villages, like complete disaster. Well, this time, when I was passing through this region, all of a sudden, among the destroyed homes, I saw some that are being built. And it's more of them. And it is kind of interesting, funny, that you have a destroyed houses and new houses, one next to the other one. An organization which works there that we have been supporting as well is right now finding ways of empowering farmers who started coming back to the area so they would be ready to start farming when the spring starts. So they have been giving them financial support to buy seeds, to buy machinery, to build greenhouses, to get animals, livestock. So when the spring starts, the farmers would be able to start farming, and hopefully they will be self-sustaining and the life will return back to this area. And the very last chapter, what makes me laugh? City of Kharkiv, I named it several times. It is in northeastern Ukraine, area which is very close to the front lines. I was in the very center of Kharkiv, so I was somewhere in the area where the words Kharkiv are. But when I opened the maps on my cell phone, it showed my location up there in the forest. Well, smart Ukrainian engineers that played with the GPS so that the rockets, which are GPS navigated, instead of ending in the center of the town, end up in the forest part of the town.
Also mass, like,
Sorry?
it would also help, like, get rid of, like, you wouldn't see civilization, and there are people, gatherings of people, groups of people, like in cities. So
another thing, this is a typical kind of picture of a center of any bigger Ukrainian town. There are statues inside. When the war started, Ukrainians put sandbags around statues to protect them.
To preserve their culture and their art.
Exactly. So this is a statue of Saint Olha, and it is in the very center of the historical Kiev. And this is what it used to look like until recently. When I was there the last time, well, I was out. But she's still dressed up a little bit in a bulletproof vest.
Oh.
I thought that was fun. This is as much as I wanted to show you. If you have time for questions.
Sure.
I will ask the first question. Did all of you get this?
Ages of the school children and the orphanages, or is it just for like elementary or younger, or what are the ages where the children can come there?
We work with 3 different orphanages. One that I've been knowing for the longest, and it is an exception because this is an organization which I knew already before the war. It is an orphanage called Father's House. It was started by a Christian medical doctor already in 1990s. And that is an orphanage that takes children from any age, from young children up to adulthood. Another orphanage that we work with is state-run. The problem of state-run orphanages is that
there is a top of 18. When a child becomes adult legally, when the child becomes 18, the state orphanages in Ukraine still discharge them. Now imagine the person was living her whole life in a sheltered environment, and now all of a sudden the person is discharged. No family, no ties. It is very tough. So one thing which other partner organization that we support does is they have been helping these young adults to get into life, providing them the social structure that they need. Third orphanage that we have been supporting, the name of it is Rebienok, which means in Ukrainian a little baby, and it is an orphanage which covers children from basically 0 up until 6 years of age. And for this orphanage, I had a story last time, maybe I'll say it again. This is an orphanage which is placed in a suburb of Kiev. It is a western suburb. Now, if you remember how the war started, Russians took Ukrainians by surprise because Ukrainians were expecting that Russians would attack from the east, from Donetsk and Luhansk. They did, but much more of the Russian soldiers actually walked around through Belarusia. Here is Kiev, which is in central Ukraine. They walked past Kiev, and they entered Ukraine west of Kiev, and they started marching on Kiev from the west. Well, directly here, in the suburb of Kiev, where the Ukrainian army stopped the Russian army and fighting was going on, is the orphanage Rebienok. Children, 0 to 6 years of age, 100 kids, for 2 weeks, in a damp, dirty, wet basement with their caregivers, because there was fight going up on the street between the two armies. The children are now in safety in Poland. But very hard 2 weeks.
When you were there last, were the Ukrainian people becoming aware of the shift in U.S. government policy already toward them, and how were they reacting?
They are very concerned. They are very concerned. Since the war started, I have been in Ukraine maybe 15 times. I spent there altogether more than 6 months. And since the war started, they talk about peace. They want peace. They hope for peace. They pray for peace. When you have a discussion with them, you would sit and talk, they would say, Jan, do you know what I will do when the war is over? Each one of them has dreams. His dreams, what they will do after the war will be over. They don't wish for anything more than for peace. But Ukrainians make clear distinction between what they call Putin's peace and the righteous peace. And the problem with Putin's peace is that they are afraid that if peace is done too easily and too much in favor of Russia, the only thing which will happen would be that Russia will get 2 or 3 years to rearm again and to attack Ukraine again, and that the war will be much worse than this one. And this is what Ukrainians are afraid of. They are saying this war has been so terrible that we need to find a peace, which they call a righteous peace, which would mean that we will have guarantees that our children will live in peace, that the war will not come back again.
Any more questions?
Zelensky support at this point? You know, we keep hearing news reports. What kind of support for Zelensky at this point?
In Ukraine?
Yeah.
He has national support. Not uncritical.
Right.
Every nation is critical of its politicians. Come on. We Czechs are very critical of our own politicians. And Ukrainians as well. At the same time, it is clear for Ukrainian society that you don't change leadership in the middle of a war. Yeah. Like the decision of Ukrainian parliament of this week that basically the presidential elections will be taking place after the war is over is only logical. Yes, he has been serving past his term, true. But as we say in Czech, you don't change horses when you are in the middle of a street. There is no, at this moment, there is no alternative for him in Ukraine.
Thank you, Jan. I want to take just a few minutes to invite Ellen Smith up to inform us about what's been going on in Louisville. You may know that half of the mission co-workers have been dismissed. Ellen was one of them. She had worked in Russia and Eastern Europe. And as she makes her way up here, I want to acknowledge the presence of Jean Waters. Jean, would you stand so folks can welcome you? Jean has come from Omaha, and she's a leader in the Eastern Europe Partnership Network. Ellen.
Thank you. I didn't come here to do this, but Randy asked me to. He did show me your mission coworkers that you support. And I can't tell you their fate. I know most of them, but I'm not at liberty to speak for them. And you can ask them, whether they are still, whether they have been invited to continue or not. I don't know if you realize in the GA 3 years ago, there was an overture to unify OGA, which is Office of the General Assembly, and Presbyterian Mission Agency, PMA. And that has been going on for the last 2.5 years with the Unification Commission. The results, they're still in process. But the reality is that World Mission will be closed, and there'll be a new organization within the Interim Unified Agency, which is going to be called Ecumenical Liaisons. It will be fewer people. They're going to rely on the mission networks. So if you have a mission network that you're connected with, stand with them, help them out. Many of my colleagues who have been released, they're finding their way right now. They will, I think in all likelihood, as I will stay connected with the Eastern Europe Partnership Network as an ordinary person. They will do the same and stay in touch with their networks. And there are networks all over the denomination for all these places that we've served. I can't give you the specifics. And I don't really know what the new agency for international missions is going to look like. They're still working on it. People have been invited to participate in that. I'm close to retirement. I'm fine. I will be retired. They're still making those decisions. So this is really all in process. I will tell you it's not been an easy few weeks. And a lot of people are struggling, just emotionally. It's just hard to let go of your heart's work for all this time. But I hope that they will stay engaged with those networks, because I think the networks need them, and you need them, and we all work together in partnership, and we work together in partnership to support the new agency, because they're going to need those mission networks and all of you to help them as they move forward. I don't know the whole picture yet. I don't think anybody does. Somebody does, probably. I don't. And as I say, I can't tell you about those 3 families that you've been supporting. You have to ask them. And if there are other churches here that are working with other co-workers, it's the same answer. I was released, and I probably would have been retiring someday. And probably for me, I'll be fine. I'm sad, but I also intend to go back to Eastern Europe and reconnect with the people that I've worked with for close to 24 years. So it's okay for me. People are grieving. They'll get worked through it too. I know that the new agency is going to need your support too. And And I would send a note to the people that you've worked with for all these years. You don't have to ask them, were you let go or not? Just say, we're thinking about you. And if there's anything we can do, I think it's okay to ask too. But you can't put pressure on them, because if they don't want to let you know, it's part of the grieving process. And that's the reality. It's been this only happened a little bit ago, so we're still working through it. They need your support. Louisville needs your support. It's not what we wanted, maybe. I don't think it's what Louisville wanted. Finances are down, and how do you work through that? But they're trying to work up a new structure that will work with finances, and that will still work with our international partners, who are still important. And the co-workers, for me, they're still important. For Louisville too, they're still important. They've done a lot. Their work has been incredible, and let's celebrate it as much as we can. So I think that's the best I can tell you.
Any questions for Ellen while she's here?
Yes.
So this is primarily a financial thing?
I don't really know. I know it's partly a financial thing. They did do a study of what they had the capacity to support over the next 5 years. But I think it's more than that. I think it's just rethinking how they want to do it. So, but I don't have any clear answers. Partly financial. I mean, everything's financial these days in the churches.
So if you have fewer people providing the services, then obviously fewer services are being provided.
That's why the networks are really important. So if we work together, we can still do our best with our partners. So I would say, if you've got a mission network that your mission coworkers have been working on, if you're not a part of it now, get in touch. Find ways that you can help them. You can participate with them. And Louisville hopes that there's ways that you'll support them too. So it's a complicated time, let me tell you. So I'm working through it. But as I say, I was so close to retirement. What are you going to do?
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. Well, please stay and enjoy some conversation with one another if you wish, but let us depart in peace to serve the Lord. Thanks again for coming.